Well, hello. Today in the studio, I've got a very special guest, Mr. Christian Bedewi. Now, I had to get correct pronunciation on that because it seems I did get it wrong.
Mate,
but that's all right.
That was perfect.
Look, it was perfect. I got it right that time. But look, that was the second take. I can't accept that I got that.
At least it wasn't the third take.
Look, it wasn't the third take, and I did learn the first time. But, buddy, I am so delighted to have you here to talk to me because, yeah, you've been super instrumental in my, in particular, car building life. And I spent a fair time around you when you were doing lots of sideways things. And, mate, I'm just really excited to talk to you about the journey of a man who was an enthusiast who now runs a performance shop.
Yeah, I guess it was a very transitional journey, per se. Just loved my cars and I got into them and started learning more and more everything I possibly could about them until I ended up to a point where I am now. But things just sort of flowed from one to the other.
And it's funny how those sorts of things happen because I met you when you were doing a lot of drifting and out at Archie and all sorts of things, and you were rolling around in your S15. For people that haven't met Christian, he owns a performance workshop in Brisbane called Sideways Motorsport. And, you know, you can sort of put two and two together. A man that likes drifting built a workshop called Sideways. And Christian's gone on to do some pretty wild stuff. And the level of build that he does now is nothing short of extraordinary. And that's part of the reason that I'm so excited to have him on here, is to sort of talk about some of those things and some of the processes and how I guess you found yourself working at that level after this many years from a bloke that was, you know, just out, I guess, sort of tooling in the backyard.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. In a real long story short, we'll call it.
No, I want a long story long. We're not here for a long story short, mate. I want the whole story. I want the Christian as a young bloke. Were you a Hot Wheels kid or were you a
I actually
RC
had
kid
zero
or?
interest in cars at all. I was a very late bloomer.
Were you really?
Throughout high school, my passion was actually IT and computers,
Really?
believe it or not, and music. So both of those two things were my passions, I guess, at the time. I was originally got accepted into uni for doing an IT degree, which I deferred because I was too busy following my music. So first year out of high school, I did a tour of the west coast of America with an Australian all-star jazz big band. So we got to do a recording in LA and play with Bobby Shoe and all those sort of things back in the day. So I thought coming back to Australia, yes, my drumming career. Drums, by the way, obviously.
So drums, yeah, and look, we're really glossing over this here. So hang on, you went over and you were recording as well. So
We did a recording over there, yeah.
as part of a group. So what was the group here?
It was purely just an audition-based Australian all-star band. So everyone in Australia could audition for this particular
Seriously?
band.
When was this?
2005.
Yeah, right.
And if you were successful, they flew us down to Sydney for 5 days. We rehearsed, and then they shoved us overseas to go play at the Monterey Jazz Festival and a few other places around there. And yeah,
What?
that was good fun.
What? What?
Very different to cars, I guess.
Mate, I'm
but-
here to, talk. And we're at what? Jazz Fest at Monterey? As in...
That was great. It was a really good experience. Yeah, so we got to play in one of the main halls over there. Yeah, it was good.
Mate, when did you pick up a set of sticks? Like, how long were you drumming?
I started in grade 8, playing piano actually, and then I went from piano to percussion.
It's a natural progression. I mean, you know, banging keys to...
Well, my high school music teacher was actually also the person that taught my brother, and he's also quite a good percussionist and still does that to this day in London. And maybe just a bit of that talent runs in the family, and just went with it. But I just got into drumming and loved it back then, so I thought that was what I was going to end up being, was some famous drummer, and no.
No, that wasn't it. Mate, did you do a bit of garage band? Was there, you know...
I used to have a few originals bands. So I had one in particular. Don't ask about the name, but They Are Spies. So we were a cross between like Incubus and Red Hot Chili Peppers, and we used to gig around Brisbane and the coast and stuff.
Do recordings exist of this that we can still...
Possibly.
Possibly,
There's there's EPs around.
Yeah. Oh, you know we're going digging for that. Because I can do... now, this is one of my favourite things, I can go like, Eli, bring it up. Our screen doesn't work yet, but, you know, we'll get there one day.
But at the time, the guys wanted to start getting more serious, and they wanted to start touring Australia and that sort of thing. And for whatever reason, by that time, my cars passion had sort of started, and I was getting into drifting, and I had to say to the guys, look, if the time comes when a gig lines up with a drift competition, for example, I'm not choosing the band, and that's not fair on you guys. Like, you need everyone with what you want to do to be 110% into everything. And I said, that's just not where I'm at anymore. So I decided to leave and pursue cars more.
Such was the call of drifting. And here's a big question. How on earth did you even get across drifting? How did you fall into that rabbit hole?
My first turbo car. So I bought the S15 was actually my first ever turbo car that I had driven. I got that when I was 19, and I remember the first time I drove it, it was 240 horsepower. It got dynoed out on 16 pound, like next to nothing. But I just thought I have to have this. I nearly needed a new set of pants after that particular first drive, and I was like, wow, this is for me. And I ended up at a job I was working at. One of the other guys there that I ended up living with, he actually had just a completely stock NA VN Commodore with a welded diff. So when it rained in Mexico, obviously, put it out a long time ago, yes.
In Mexico. Yes.
It was on. We were just always out, and I just the first time I did it or attempted to do it, I was like, I've just got to learn how to do this, and then just kept doing that until I eventually found myself at Archerfield, and obviously that was a big learning curve as well. And then back in the day, I had a few people there that were able to go, yeah, you're doing this wrong or you're doing this right. But I guess my mind as well, what's been quite instrumental for me getting where I am now, I'm very analytical, so I can look at what I'm doing and I can play it all back and go, okay, I can point out my own mistakes. I go, I did this wrong. I needed to do this at that point. So I'm good at training myself maybe in that sense. And that I found was really, that was really helpful, because it wasn't so much the putting your hands up and going, I don't know what I did wrong. Why did that happen? It's I can label everything that happened to get to that point. So then it's, okay, what do I need to do now to get to the point where I want to be at?
And so you just rolled up at Archerfield.
And I couldn't complete a full lap until the second time I went out. Yeah.
No doubt.
But yeah, just loved it, fell in love with it, and just kept trying to do the things.
It kind of does that though, doesn't it?
Yes. So it's one of those very addictive things that you just, yes.
Once you learn to make a car go sideways,
well, it's like anything for someone that might be interested in either racing or whatever. Once you do it for the first time, you just maybe it ignites something within yourself that you just think, I've got to do this, you know. And yeah, not the rest is history, but that's where it sort of stemmed from. And then the actual business itself, believe it or not, well, you'd understand this too, from a business that's probably been approached several thousand times to, hey, if I put a sticker on my car, can you give me something for free? 1,000 times. And even I cop that at the shop now. But younger me, I'd actually just moved out with my partner at the time, and I was the only one sort of working. So I was supporting the house and the baby that had just been born and all that sort of stuff. So then still trying to continue drifting on the side was financially difficult.
Complex.
So I thought, okay, well, how else can I do this? So I thought I would start sucks to be you, but a marketing and advertising business where I actually set the car itself up as a business itself. So I would approach businesses and give them XYZ proposals and say, look, for this much per month, you can get this. And I'm completely set up as an actual business to do that, rather than just, hey, chuck a sticker on the car. I'd have everything labelled out. And I think that's probably that led me to getting a lot of my sponsorship deals, I guess, back in the day that I had. I also learned it's very easy to get products and services from businesses rather than actual cash flow. So that got me to a point of the car looked good. I'm out there competing. I'm still putting a lot of my own money into it though, right? So I thought, right, a few other companies I was chatting to, I said, why don't I just become a reseller / dealer for your parts, and I'll sell your parts and I'll make my money that way. And then so began selling parts, and yeah. And it just sort of flowed on to, having a shop at one point that I share with my engine builder, yeah.
Because it's wild how you've fallen into the sport, then created an income stream to support the sport.
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting is when's the last time you went drifting?
Yeah, look, let's not. I sold the last car in lieu of building the new one, which I just never get time to do because I'm too busy doing everyone else's cars.
Such is the problem of starting your own business to support the habit.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm also not, in all the jobs that I've had throughout my life, I guess, per se, I get bored very easily if I'm not challenged. And I think I like to be challenged on both physically and mentally. And if I'm not challenged on both fronts, I get bored and let's go do something else. Owning the shop, obviously, you'd understand this too, can do all of those things and a lot more and you're not sleeping. But I've never been bored and I've never got up and felt like I'm going to work, if that makes sense. So I've enjoyed the ride and the process of building, and hopefully can build further.
And it's quite the roller coaster, because when you were early days of drifting and you were supported, because you were out at competing at Parklands, and this was Raceline Stadium Drift is probably where I...
Stadium Drift would have been.
Yeah.
And Stanthorpe, I think, particularly. Yeah, I remember. So let's have a few of your photos floating around.
Mate, they're still kicking around.
Mate, you were the man. Still are the man.
Mate, I'm an old man now. Well, that was the whole thing, though. But with all the drifting stuff and just coming out and taking photos, as a guy that does do advertising, that was my only way to find my way around motorsport. That was the only skill I could offer, because I can't, intimately that I'm not real good on the tools.
Having said that, though, it's a very underrated skill, because you're always the dude that people come up to at the end and go, hey, did you get any photos of my car? Like, what have you got? And it sucks because you're like, I'm out there doing all the work and what do I get for it? But you want what I've got.
Do you know what's been really weird? Because I just did a track event on the weekend and I took my second Falcon out, and there's a couple of fellas that I know that were shooting out there, and I was like busting to get some photos of my car. And I actually found it really weird to be on the other side and looking for photos to have come up and, here's something I could buy and share and all those sorts of things. And it's very weird because, this is a long time later. What year are we in? 2023. Because I started taking photos in about 2007, 2008, thereabouts. So I spent a long time pointing cameras at cars, and a very short amount of time on the receiving end. Yeah, I've actually found that to be really odd, because your motorsport world, and this is a conversation that's sort of come up a lot, is just what a nice group of people it is. There's a lot of people very like-minded. We're all aware that it's a terrible use of money, a questionable use of time, but it's a lot of fun.
It's one of those small communities when you're involved in it, everyone knows everyone. Yeah.
And it's just nice. That part of it is, I think, the thing that I've enjoyed the most, because I laugh as I look around at my friendship group and the people I know and the people I talk to on a regular basis. 9.5 times out of 10, I've somehow met them through the automotive world.
No, I completely understand that. When I sort of either catch up with a few friends and they want to do a family thing or something, and my partner asks, "Are we just going to be talking about cars again all night?" Sorry.
Yeah, probably.
Possibly. I'll try not to.
Good chance. Because with your S15, and I'm interested to sort of work through this reasonably sequentially with you. With that car, you were doing your own work on it. So when you sort of started going to Archerfield, were you doing your own work on it then?
No, I had a few people that, again, I didn't really know a lot about. Like, I'm still learning. I had a few people sort of just helping me do most of those things to get the car out there. But I found, again, possibly by that self-analysis and how I look at things as well, I found the car was never reliable or more reliable than when I just did it on my own. I think I was listening to the wrong people at the time that just gave me advice that I didn't know anything better. So you just, oh yeah, cool, let's do that, and I just ran with it. And just we found I had a lot of issues along the way. Like we wanted to, for example, there was the S15 still had an original SR20 in it when I first started drifting, and I wanted to upgrade. I was starting to go into pro class, and I wanted to go, all right, so next year I need to step it up. This standard SR20 isn't doing it anymore. And I was given a Toyota 1UZ engine that I was going to put in the front, and actually I'd lined up Peter Kay. Well, we used to be Kay's Fabrication. I think he's back doing it now. Him lined up to do the turbo conversion of this thing and put it in my S15 because I didn't do any of that stuff back then. And the particular S14 that I'm rebuilding at the moment came up for sale, and that was in Darwin. And I thought, oh, this could be kind of cool to have two cars with the Sideways name on it per se, and talked myself into the whole business and advertising, and cool to have two cars running side by side. And I flew up to have a look at this car, and it was a really cool car, but then again, it still had a standard SR20 making sort of 350 horsepower. It was a bit more than what I had. I was like, look, this still isn't where I want to be next year, and this is all my upgrade money done, and then I'm stuck for another year with a car that still isn't really quite where I want it for what I wanted to do up here. But one of my sponsors sort of jumped in at the time, and he said, well, look, you buy the car and we'll put that motor in your S15, and he's like, I'll build you this other cool motor. It was supposed to be a 2.2 stroker for that car, and we'll do all that stuff. And that just unfortunately never eventuated. And I just had the car sitting in the background, and then we thought, well, I put all my money into keeping that car running because, again, listening to various different people, I went through 4 engines in that first year trying to get into Pro 4 SR20s. And then it was the next year, it was let's do this RB conversion. I've got an RB here and we can put that in the car. And then 7 engines later in that year was my reliable one where I just stepped away and started doing things on my own.
Wow. Okay, so 7 engines in a year.
That second year, yeah.
Holy. And 7 RBs? Or?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was, again, like a bit of learning as well. There were some mechanical issues with various engines, and then I was like, well, again, when you've done especially set it up the way I had it set up, you've got to be at events. Like you'd understand motorsport too. If you say you're going to be at an event, you need to be there. So it was right, okay, I can buy this second-hand motor. Let's just put that in. Let's get through XYZ events until this motor's rebuilt, and then you just keep swapping and swapping to make sure you're at every meet you possibly can be, or what you've said you're at least going to be at. So that was a fun year, but then all the money that I've planned on maybe being able to put into the second car that was sitting there doing nothing, I was pouring into just trying to keep a single car running.
And that was, so you had an RB in that, and it was RB25?
I had a 2530 in the S15.
Yeah, 2530.
With a couple of 25s in the middle. It's what I could get my hands on at the time and throw something in just to keep running.
What were you making out of those?
It was only about 380 horsepower.
Yeah.
Purely because, again, it was an older style turbo. It was like a GT3082 turbo. And I was always, again, a believer, and that's why I took it, like, you don't need a lot of power for drifting, again, depending on what level you're competing at. But for what I was doing, it's torque is more your friend than overall power. So I had, twin 50mm gates off this thing with just a little GT3082 turbo, and people thought, oh, you're making so much power. I'm just not going to tell you how much I'm actually making, but as long as you're impressed, that's fine. But it was only about 380 horsepower, and that was enough to do anything I needed to do with it. So, but again, I was never at the 265 semi-slicks that they're at these days now, or even back then they were doing that sort of stuff, and in 4th gear at Sydney Motorsport Park, for example. The car wouldn't have done that, but I also never had the budget to get a car to that level to be able to compete at those events either. So I just made do with what I could do.
And how far did you get into the setup of the rest of the car in terms of suspension?
So all that stuff I did myself as well. So they were just coilovers, but a lot of adjustable arms, but mainly understanding things like weight transfer and how the wheel alignment actually affects how the car handles. So, for example, even just when I went from an SR20 to the RB in the front, I had to completely change my suspension setup for the extra weight in the front because I didn't like how the car handled. It was sloppy, felt slow, whereas I really liked how it handled with the SR20. So that taught me a lot about weight distribution, center of gravity, and how to wheel align and set the different things up, which I guess then too, I get or have had in the past too, like complete wheel alignment, just jobs. People bring me their car and they just want me to wheel align it basically. So I've got a few cool tools like a bump steer gauge where I can measure what your suspension's doing between compression and droop. So if you've got all your adjustable arms, we can either change, we could dial in grip, we could wind grip out, or depending on where you are in your suspension stroke, we could give the car a bit more grip here, or if you want to go in, all sorts of different things. So I got a bit of that work too, which was always good, but I enjoyed just, again, learning. I always enjoy learning more things or something else that can help me do something.
Because the suspension setup and the alignment stuff, big lock kits weren't really a thing early on, but your knuckles and your huge lock.
Well, that was the first sort of step.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you go into that fairly early? Into the
well, no different to anyone else, I guess. Everyone was doing the same thing at the time, where you just sort of cut and shut your knuckles at the back and get some bigger tie rods and just cut maybe a groove into your LCAs at the front just to allow a little bit more, and that's what you got.
Because I didn't realise, and I'd never thought about this. I was chatting to a reasonably well-known drifter recently, and he was explaining to me that when it's on lock, the wheel at the front of the slide is basically, it has all the weight on it, and the trailing wheel, if it's still got some angle, it's basically just dragging and slowing it down, which is part of why they're trying to get them lining up when they... Is that...
there's a certain amount of effort into that, and a certain amount of truth to that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You will find your inside wheel will, I guess, what that's doing at the time will have more of an effect on how the car handles than your outside wheel. But there's definitely
I'd never thought about it, because on a normal road car, you think they don't turn it. It sort of sits out a little bit more so it can come round. Is that correct? Have I got? So when you're turning your front wheel, so that is it equal
on the street? I think it. I'm actually not too sure.
No, I can't remember.
The thing with the street car is usually you tend to have a little bit more caster on your passenger side of the wheel to bring the wheel slightly further forwards. Now, the reason they do that is because every road is actually slightly cambered to allow for drainage and water flow and stuff. So to help the car track straight, is actually usually the passenger side wheel will be slightly further forwards than your driver's side for a normal car. Whereas on track cars, we tend to even them out because we don't want to favour one side or the other. And that's how you sort of sometimes, if your wheel arm starts going out, or if that's out a little bit, like your car might start pulling to the left a little bit and it's following sort of the road drainage. Every road's different too, so they might have different gradients. But if you've ever looked at a wheel arm, that's why they sort of passenger wheel goes slightly further forwards.
And it's this stuff that I find fascinating, because it's funny how much time we spend talking about like how much power and how much delivery, trying to get your wheel speed and all these other sorts of things. But how much goes into the setups? Because I find it fascinating, even in your supercars and stuff, where your tyre pressures
play a massive part.
End up being super critical to your overall setup. And you can put all this time and effort into making something go fast, but there's so much more to an overall package.
Well, even when you're talking about tyre pressures too, even brands of tyres, how big the sidewall is, how thick the rubber is, the compound of the rubber, all that then also plays a part into what tyre pressure should you run to work best with that tyre.
And this is all just a game of trial and error.
Yeah. Well, again, too, like the one thing I've always enjoyed about drifting too, everyone has their own style or their way of drifting or the way they like to do something. So how someone might set up a car for them, the person beside them might set it up completely differently, but both ways work potentially because of how they drive. So I think it's one of those sports where you can have a complete style but still compete if you like or still do it, and you can often tell even just by maybe how aggressive someone drives or maybe how they position the car or position themselves. Like you can often pick the driver just by looking at what the car's doing.
One of the things I've always enjoyed about the sport as a whole was the diversity of vehicle. and the fact that you can, within a set of regulations, basically build whatever you want. And I've always enjoyed that there's different engine combinations, be it 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder, turbocharged, and people just doing ridiculous things is probably one of my favourite aspects of it.
Well, yeah, it's like having an open class race, I guess, if you like to say. So there's no regulations on it per se with what you can and can't do. Again, depending on what level you get to, there are obviously in some of the bigger worldwide comps, there's definitely regulations and things, but it's still very open to interpretation and very open to what can you do under those regulations. Whereas your V8 supercars, for example, everything is censored, everything has to be checked over and regulated, and you're all realistically just about running the same stuff with different brands on it by the end of it. So there's definitely a lot more room to make it your own car per se, or have your own style. And
adding that own style, that's something that I've always really enjoyed, is how you could watch the individual, I guess, be moulded into that car, and as you said, in the way that they drive it, and the way they present it, and the way that they'll actually steer it around.
So, yeah, I was going to say, I was going to give you some details about a car that's coming up soon, but I probably shouldn't say anything just yet. So.
That's all right. That's all right. If there's anything secret, squirrel. But one of the ones I've been really enjoying more recently is Levi Clark, who's been putting together what effectively looks like a rat rod, but is a V8 drifting, like, hot rod.
Yeah.
And that sort of stuff. The fact that you can just make a hot rod to send sideways, I think is just the best.
And you could take that into a comp, I guess, if you wanted to. Like, there wouldn't be anything stopping you at all. Yeah.
And I love that freedom. And I think that it's one of the most serious limiting factors in, for example, supercars. I think that that's a really tough game for them at this point in time, where you're having to make two cars that are relatively new, haven't been developed for this, and they're sort of, trying to squeeze them into that funnel. Where I look at events like GT and those sort of categories where there's a set of things that you build for and the cars are prepared for that, and there's you're trying to find a balance in them so that they're reasonably fair. But you get a wide spread of things, and that's always my favourite, but then drifting takes it to that whole other place.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's never been as big a sport, especially over here.
Absolutely.
In Australia, and the money level is very different too.
Very different. Very much self-funded.
Yeah.
And it's very much do it yourself, or you probably won't be doing it, which is
that sounds right.
how this whole thing ends up going. So you've blown 7 engines.
I didn't quite blow all of them, but they were definitely up. 7 motors went through that car. Yes.
Do you remember what year that was, broadly? 10, 11, 12?
I genuinely don't remember, actually.
Trying to put it
probably
together.
around about, I think, 2014, 2015-ish.
Yeah.
I'm going to say around there-ish.
Yeah. And that's when, because I'm interested to sort of know when the transition, you've started preparing your own cars, you've started building your own things. When's it gone from that to other people then asking you for help?
Well, I originally got onto this, the slightly funny story, I guess. The guy that built my last engine, he is the guy I have a shop with now. And we made this joke because by this point I've sort of developed a little bit more and I'm selling more parts and rah-de-rah-rah-rah. And he built my last engine and he sort of made the joke, well, I'm building engines and I'm selling parts and he's doing engines, sorry. We should just start a shop together. And I thought, oh yeah, a cool idea. And I wasn't anywhere near financial enough to do any of that. And a time came after that last motor, and it was a good motor. It's the motor that I sold the car with years later, still running, and where he had sort of one of those neighbours at the time that retired with not much else better to do with his time, but kept reporting him to council for running a business out of his house. And I remember him calling me, just going, so that idea we were talking about, are we doing it? Because I've got to do it now. I don't have a choice. And it just sort of started from there. So I went from everyone knew my car, I guess, by that point, and also by that point, I guess I started having a fairly reliable car. Like all I did for it's about a 2-year period there was literally fuel, tyres, and basic maintenance on the car for 2 years worth of drifting, which was great.
That's testament to a well set up car.
And yeah, so I also had the business name out there already because I'd been doing parts and things for a bit, so people already started knowing the name a little bit. And yeah, he didn't have any of that stuff set up at all, so he just said, "Well, I'll just build motors under the business name, but we're still technically separate." But yeah, and we just started a shop from there, and then I've never not had work until. So the first shop we had over in Rocklea, I remember I could store a maximum of 3 cars, and I had 1 hoist, and that was it. And I didn't have very many tools, and yeah, I think within the first 6 months there, we were like, we need a bigger shop. It's always the way, right? And we had that lease for 2 years, so we just made it work. And again, big learning experience for all of that, and that was yeah, a lot of long hours, tough work, like just feeling like you're really not getting there, but you kind of are. Like I didn't actually even pull a wage from the shop for the first year and a half, because I just put all the money I made, I put back into it, into tools, into something, you know. And then we moved at the end of that. So I've been at the shop I'm at now this is the 4th year we've been there now. And then I moved, I bought some more hoists and bought some more tools and just kept expanding, and yeah.
Because how many cars can you fit in the current shop?
Still not enough. Nowhere near enough.
Oh, I know that. I'm just wondering how many.
I can get 12 in there now. And the moment one car leaves, the next one's lined up about 2 months backwards, waiting to come in.
It's pretty crazy.
Well, now I guess you're going from that. So I was just a one-man show doing that's just all the car stuff. Now I've got 2 guys helping me out now. I've got a dyno, I've got 3 hoists, and I've got all the tools I could possibly want. Yeah, it's been fun.
It's just bloody mayhem, isn't it?
Oh, you understand it as well. I'm sure you've been through exactly the same process with TPR.
Mate, my story is nearly identical.
Where you have an idea and you just keep working at it until said idea progresses, and you just keep trying to go, okay, I want to take it to the next level. So then you think you can keep putting in more hours, and until I think I hit a wall. So the mechanic I've got now working with me, he's been with me since about October, September last year. The previous year and a half before that, it took me a year and a half to find another mechanic. I had 2 mechanics before then. But yeah, the year and a half there, I was literally just on my own. I just hit this wall about August, September time last year, where I was like, this is nuts. And I've either got 3 directions this is going. And it's either I'm happy with the 80-hour plus weeks I started racking up physically at the shop, and then that doesn't include trying to do your other stuff outside of being at the shop, and how much that's earning, or you scale it back so you earn a bit less, and are you happy with that? Oh, sorry. Whatever it is. Give up. Go do something else that's probably going to make you more money, let's be honest. Or try and scale and try and build it further than what you have already. So I just decided, well, look, I've got this far, and I'm doing okay, so I'm either going to go broke trying to scale, or I'm going to make it work along the way. I'm still going. So, yeah.
Mate, it is the story, isn't it? That is the. And look, the more people you talk to that do this, the story is very familiar.
Oh, it's always the same too. You've got to risk it to get the biscuit, right? Like, yeah, and again, business too is a lot of risks. You've got to have the courage to take those risks, and sometimes they pay off, sometimes they don't. But I think the important thing is you always learn from what doesn't work. So you go, well, next time I try that, it's going to work, rather than making the same mistakes every time.
Because something I've learned from spending time with you in the shop.
Probably nothing.
Lies, Christian, lies. Because you were kind enough to offer me some guidance when I looked at a dirty old Ford Falcon I had, and I went, hey, you can buy turbo kits for these. And I'm
It'll just bolt on, mate.
and
Yeah,
it'll just bolt on. And as a man who had probably just watched too much American Chopper, West Coast Customs, like,
Mighty Car
yeah,
Mods,
I've watched the things, and you spin a few spanners and zut, and then boom, she's done.
This just bolts
Yeah,
on, right?
it just works. It's just all easy.
What else you got to do?
It's all easy. I don't know what you blokes are talking about. And I said to you, I said, look, would you help me with this? Because I want to learn. Despite my lack of capacity, I'm very interested in becoming more savvy, because I probably don't even have, and particularly at that point in time, I didn't really even have base level skills of like how to do stuff. I didn't even know like what tool or what thing you would use.
And it can be very daunting to do that sort of project if you are at that point.
Massively, because I didn't know where to start, and it was beyond me. But I was interested to learn. Like, I really wanted to understand what went in to building a car, because I've hung around enough race teams over the years and I've seen it all happen, and I watch them do the stuff and I have a broad understanding, but I've never done the work. And you were kind enough to make room at your shop for me, and then despite all the hours you work, you were happy to hang back with me for a couple of hours when you had time, and then show me how to do these things. And you spent this time with me teaching me the basics of fabrication and car building.
Well, I'm always happy to help. Like, again, you were someone that was very influential when I was drifting, and you guys were kind enough to, like, even my company logo is actually also thanks to you, sir.
Mate, interestingly, thanks to a former podcast guest as well, Mr. Matt Stewart, with the artwork up here.
Yeah, right. Small world.
Mate, the smallest.
But no, like, you're able to point me in the right direction a lot of times, and I'm also a believer of you should never forget where you come from either. So when people are able to help you earlier on, if you're in a position you can help those people or anywhere, like, I will do my best I can.
And that's the thing, is I know how busy you are, and I know what a busy shop you run, and I knew what I was asking of you, and I knew that it was unreasonable.
No, not at all.
But I was so grateful that you made that space for me, but more importantly that you made the time, because something really crazy happened, and we probably had the car there for 8 months, 10 months, 12 months. It was a little bit,
yeah. It was definitely, unfortunately, gets stuck on the back burner a bit too.
Oh, look, they do, but that's part of the thing when you're doing the work yourselves. It's not it's not a high priority project. And it also just sort of moved along fairly slowly because I'm there trying to do the bits. But what was really crazy with that was you just explaining to me how things worked, showing me, and then me getting in and trying to do the stuff. And even down from when we started and we had to move the battery from the engine bay to the boot, because we identified that would be an issue for where piping would run for an intercooler.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So you just move a battery, you just take it out of the front, and you like chuck it in the back. Yeah, mate, that's easy. You got to run a wire. I've done some car stereo.
Yeah, good to go.
Oh, that's so easy. That one job took me 8 hours. That was my introduction to building a car, and it was probably somewhere in that 8 hours I went, oh God.
What you thought was really simple takes a bit longer.
This is oddly complex, because it wasn't just to chuck it in the bag. It was also to do it to Christian's level, where it would be the correct gauge of cable, it's done right, it's moved into the right spot. And then one of my favourite things, and I actually showed somebody this the other day, you even taught me things, I didn't know what a nutsert was.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, so you can like drill a hole, put a thing in and like squish that in, and then you've got an actual bolt fitting.
Yeah.
I'm like, how cool is that?
Nutserts are probably one of the best things invented. They're great, yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable. And that process of you showing me these things and then me physically stumbling through them totally transformed my appreciation for, what you do and what anybody who builds vehicles does. I had no concept of how many hours go into the troubleshooting side in particular, where you look at what is theoretically a simple problem and you go, oh, yeah, that's easy. I should only take 10 minutes. And 10 hours later, you're still there on that.
I had one of these problems yesterday actually on a customer's car where the very basically I say, his AC unit was not turning on his AC compressor.
You go, it's probably just a line. You go, probably a bit of power somewhere, little failure somewhere. You go,
just a little failure somewhere.
Yeah. How hard could it be?
5 hours later, I still haven't figured it out.
And this is the crazy thing, is how complex the work is, and particularly with a lot of the stuff that you do with your fabrication work. These are, again, things that I didn't understand. So with your help, we made an exhaust system, we made intercooler piping, and one of the things I wanted to do my whole adult life is learn how to weld. And once again, you were kind enough to show me how to use your TIG torch, and as I glue the TIG torch to the weld on the first burn, and you're like, oh, whoops, and then we've got to sand that back and go again. Doing those things and having that guidance gave me the confidence to try more things. And here's a funny story for you. Out of sheer frustration, I was trying to get somebody to fix my fence had dropped, your gate, and I'd booked somebody in, had to wait 3 weeks for them to come and do it, and I was getting them to re-weld one of the hinges that had broken. And when this bloke then cancelled the day of, after a month of trying to put this together, I pretty much just rage quit, and I'm like, look, I kind of sort of maybe know how to weld. I'm going to go and buy a welder, and $1,200 later, I'm going to sort this job out myself. Because if I would have paid that guy $200 or whatever it was for that, and I went, well, look, $200, $1,200, same, whatever. I'll figure it out myself. And I went and bought a Unimig setup.
You got a razor from memory, didn't you?
I do, yeah. And do you know what? I fixed that bloody gate by myself.
Nice
work. I did all the things you taught me, and I prepped the metal, and I cleaned it, and I used the...
But how satisfying was that at the end, though?
Honestly, mind-blowing. Mind-blowing how satisfying it was to have the confidence to approach that task, which was something that I'd never been able to do, and then suddenly be able to do it myself, was just amazing. And that's a credit to you, because I would never have tried something like that.
Nothing to do with me. If you enjoy it enough, you just need the confidence to do it. And that was the only thing. I think you were just a little bit, I don't know how to pull that apart, so I shouldn't.
Correct.
Pull it apart. If you can pull it apart, you can most of the time put it back together.
Look, I'll be honest with you. No, I can pull things apart. It's putting them back together where it comes unstuck.
You've always got the one bolt left over, right?
Oh, mate, the one bonus bolt and the old whoopsie-doo-dah. And would you believe it, on my shelf of trinkets there, can you see that little pipe there? That pipe is the first weld that I did. That's I
look at you
I pinched that from the shop because that was my test piece where I did my first tigging. And I'm really proud of that moment in time, because that was something that I've wanted to do forever, and I'm here doing the tigging movement with my hand. And I'm rolling the torch, and my whole life I've wanted to do that. And I finally got to under your tutelage, and I even have my own gas bottle at home. I got the whole shebang.
Look at you go.
Yeah, and I know how to, get the flow rates and do the things, and you taught me how to, all this wonderful stuff that I wouldn't have picked it up by accident, and I could have watched all the YouTube in the world, and I wouldn't have crossed over to the actual doing. It was having someone stand there with me and go, no, not like that, like this, and let me try, let me make the mistake, and then go, right, that was good, but maybe try this next time.
The best way to learn, and I say this to welding too, because actually I even did my mechanic. I've started doing a bit of welding with him after hours too. Is you just got to do it. You just need the time to do it. Like someone can tell you how to do it for hours on end. Unless you actually do it, everyone, again, like drifting, everyone will do it differently. You've got to find what works for you, and then I guess just improve on your own technique and your own abilities.
And make the mistakes.
Like when I've made thousands.
I had it set for... What was it? I think I had it set for 5 mil steel, and then I went and worked on 3mm steel and like just blew holes in
Blew
it.
a hole.
And I'm like, why is this not working? And I'm like going and just blowing holes in this thing, trying to do this nice little joint. I'm like, But now I know to look and check and go, have I said everything correctly? And it's those feel things, which again, not dissimilar to drifting, where most of it is. There's a technical understanding, but then you've just got to do the work. You just got to put in the
hours,
the repetition.
And again, also too, like every welder is also different. Same as like every car's different. So you could put in the same settings into a different welder beside it, and it will do completely different things. So all just about learning the machine as well is a big part of it.
Because what was interesting was with you, I just did TIGging, but oddly, I've done a lot of MIG because I've found that to be most useful for the things that I'm doing around the home.
It's definitely probably more useful for an everyday fix-it sort of thing. Like if you're fixing fences and stuff, it's a lot easier just to point and shoot. It's doing the filler, everything else. TIGging, I think, is a lot more of a finessey sort of type welding where if you really don't need it, you're just taking longer to do a job that, yeah. Again, it's all about, what's the word? Pick your environment you're going to use it for.
Pretty much. And when you're slapping together things, because I've been using it to build stuff for cooking, for like fire cooking, I've been like making contraptions and I made
You made a fire pit as well.
Yeah, fire pit, and I've done a Brazilian grill and like a whole, it's amazing.
Yeah, Meg would be amazing for that.
Yeah, amazing. And and that came about because I got irritated. See, most of the things I do come about because I like get frustrated. I'm like, damn it! And this is such
amazing how many innovations you have when you're at that point, right?
This is such a dumb problem, but I couldn't cook steaks well when I was camping, and I went, and I'd seen these Brazilian grills,
pretty damn good to me.
And I went, I said, what if you could height adjust over the fire to get the temp just right? And then I went, I'm going to make one of these because it was just to have. It was more of a project of having something to build to then put the time in and the understanding. And this will make you laugh. I was trying to cut straight lines with an angle grinder. Yeah, I also learned that that's not good because I didn't have one of your sweet cut-off saws like you do at the shop. And when you're trying to do it at home, you're trying to cut straight lines with an angle. I'm like, nah.
Learning.
Look, not ideal, but got a cut-off saw now, so I can get a nice.
Hey, look out!
Mate, I can get a nice.
Yeah, believe it or not, again, depending on what you're doing with that too, that's still not straight.
Look, I'm sure it's not straight, but I bloody bet that it's a hell of a lot straighter than my wonky angle grinding.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But it was those things, and you taking that time with me and showing me these things. I can't describe to you what exponential growth that had in my.
I actually think one of the next
backyard
things
fabrication.
I saw you do was the Scott Bonner. No, not too
correct.
Not too soon after. And I just thought, that's amazing. That's awesome. And you did such a great job on that. It looked awesome.
It did. And it was exactly the same thing. And I forgot that was actually the timing because I wanted to approach another project because this was time when we were getting stuck at home a lot.
And Christian's taking too long with the Falcon and still is actually.
Oh, mate, it's a team effort. It is a team effort, that car. And would you believe it? We're going to get there.
Oh, absolutely.
Mate, Richard actually came and had a look at it on Monday, and we've done an assessment because I was trying to decide, do we throw it in the bin and just move on with life?
If you do that, I will yeah.
No.
It's not happening.
there's too much good work that's gone into it. And hilariously, as he looked over it, he said, look, we are close. As you said, there's 10% left, but that 10%, as I've come to appreciate, can be 90% of the work. I'm more realistic.
Sometimes it's the little things that can take a lot longer, and that's where you're talking about before, like trouble diagnosis and troubleshooting can sometimes spend hours, especially if it's wiring that you may not know where the issue is or something's not working right or whatever.
But I'm more patient in my assessments now, and when I look at things and when I do these sorts of jobs, and that Scott Bonner was an enormous learning curve because I bought a 1960s lawnmower that was running but like knackered and then stripped it down to its bolts and then had to acquire the parts or either fix, clean, sandblast and then rebuild it myself because I wanted a little project that I could tinker on at home because I sort of don't have the space to be able to do larger projects, and I certainly don't have the tools, and I annoy my wife a lot with all my silly projects. But the things that we did there did actually spur that on. where I'm much the same as you. I get bored pretty fast, and I like having a few projects
No, that's fair enough. I can understand.
on the go. Not even dissimilar to today. I've got Simon going out and picking up some party lights to finish for the 4 drive. The dumb things that we're setting up on that.
But hey, this is all, you can do it all yourself now though. Like, how awesome is that?
What's funny though is I prefer the professional assistance because you appreciate, and it's the same as in what we do. Like some stuff is fun to do just because it's fun, but a lot of the time it's better to have somebody that actually knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I can understand that.
You know, you can best utilise time and try and do things.
And that's often something I find myself realising more now when I guess the shop and where I'm at is more at that point, is it's less about money and more just about time. So rather than going, I could do that, but I could do something else that would be better use of my time and I'll just pay someone else to do that, it's that transitional stage of realising.
And that is honestly one of the biggest transitions in business. And they talk about this, working in the business versus on the business, which is hilarious in theory, and every business coach will talk about this. But it's just, to step away is so difficult, particularly when you're the one that has set the standards and built it from scratch and built the relationships, and it's your name attached to it.
Well, that comes back to just finding the right people to work for you then, and the good staff, which is its own challenge today as well.
Oh, absolutely. But when you find good people, you know, you got to...
I'm lucky enough to have found 2 so far.
Mate, you've done very well. And it's funny, I popped into your shop the other day. It's got such a warm feeling to it now.
We've actually just changed the office completely around again. Yeah, we've got some more shelving for more products and stuff.
Even more stuff. Well, my comment in particular was how clean your desk was. Because I've never seen that. Mate, anytime you'd walk in, you could barely see your desk.
Well, that's all courtesy to not even me myself either.
Oh, I know. I'm well aware of this.
But again, it was time. I wasn't prioritising. Like, yes, it's nice to have a tidy desk, and I should have kept it cleaner. But I need to do all this other stuff too, so that just prioritised ahead of that. And I think I had once every sort of couple of months, I'm like, right, I'll sit down for a couple of hours and I'll sort this space out.
And the letting go so that you can get onto those bigger things to build the business in the direction that you want it to go. Because you've done a heap of things in recent times, and building that dyno cell and getting that up and running as well. And
yeah, it's been good. And again, that's sort of always was the dream back in when I started back in the first shop. I'll have a dyno one day, and that was just a dream of. But again, if you set the goals and you're willing to work towards it, you can do some cool stuff.
And then you have your mates come and bring shit boxes and go, hey, mate, can you chain this bad boy for me? But look, at least we put a Haltech in there so that
hey.
When it does come back, Richard was surprised the level that we'd gone to in doing all those things. And I'm like, no, mate, the boys have done like it's...
But hopefully all being well by the sounds of it, like there's not a lot left.
No, it's not. And look, with that project, because it's certainly one that's been shelved for a hot minute. I've had it stored in a friend's garage at Salisbury.
Apologies to said friend.
No, mate. Honestly, all our neighbours think she's a gangster because, like, there's this Falcon with an intercooler hanging out the bottom. So the street cred that she has picked up has actually been phenomenal because everyone's impressed at her,
I actually believe too, if I remember correctly, you made the brackets and put all that intercooler on yourself.
I fabricated those 90-degree bends. Look, I don't know if we can really call that fabricating, but it was...
You still had to make something.
Mate, I had to make something and shape it.
There's very different levels of fabrication, and it's got to start somewhere.
And it did, and this is the beautiful thing, and I'll be forever grateful to you for that you helped push me over that ledge that I couldn't quite get past myself. I couldn't get there on my own to find that confidence to do the things. Whereas now I have a level of confidence to tackle more complex projects. And there's a lot of other fellas that have put in time as well, like Ches and Sean and, all these fellas and Richard now as well. Like, it has been a hell of a team project. And the engine that we've got now is actually it's out of Phil Moonfield's car. So that engine, I mean, to say that this is a group effort is a monster understatement. There's been so much help from so many people.
But it'll be great once it's running.
Yeah. And it will be. And what's funny is this the EL XR6 that I picked up.
Yeah.
I had to laugh. I've always loved that shape because mine's an what is it? ED.
The white one's an ED.
Yeah, the white one's an ED. It's a 92. This one's a 97. It was that shape between ED, EL, then AU. For all the Ford lovers out there, I know that you're just still groaning. Put an RB in there, mate.
I didn't say anything. No,
I can see the expression in your face. But what I really appreciated when I saw that car was it had a really lovely interior, but it had a Barra.
You don't like your taxi beads?
Mate, I love the taxi beads, don't get me wrong, they're the best. But when I saw a car when the work had been done, knowing now how much work it is to do such things, because they've done a gearbox swap, engine swap, they've done suspension.
I think I made the comment the other day, I'm like, was that a little intercooler on the front I see there?
That's a little spicy on the front. And it's set up, and I think it's sort of 350, 380, something like that. So, again, not earth-shattering power.
But still fun.
But quick enough to be funny and makes the noises and does the things.
You don't need a lot of power to have fun.
And, mate, I don't need a fast car. I'm not a particularly good driver. I just want something that makes the noises and, you have a good time and you take your
probably
friends
run
out
circles around the rest of us anyway.
Yeah, and just do silly things, because as I've watched people, go further and further into competitive stuff and build serious things, and you'd see this all the time, as you escalate your build, you break stuff.
Yes, it's not so much just let's make more power, it's let's make more power and everything around it still survives as well. Yeah.
Because building reliability into a car, where you said that your car lasted 2 seasons just changing fluids and changing tyres, getting a car to that point for the level of abuse that they get under track conditions, that's no small ask.
No, but again, if and I say this to customers as well, a poor man pays twice. You're better off. It might cost a bit more at the start, but overall in the long run, it'll work out being cheaper because you're not fixing it, you're not changing something later, you're not, I always look at future proofing. So I do get asked a lot of the times, people will come and I want to make 400 horsepower out of my Skyline. Okay, well, that's what you want to do now. I'll ask them, what do you want to do in 3 years' time? Is this just going to be where you want to sit, or are you wanting to make more later? Because depending on what they want to do, I'll suggest different things. Or I'll say, okay, well, let's use this now. And yes, it costs a little bit more now, but you're not going to be doing it again in 3 years' time when you want to go the next stage or the stage after that. So I always try and push my customers to plan for where do you want the car to be in 5 or 10 years' time, if they're still doing anything with it. Or they simply just go, hey, look, I just want a bit faster, and I'm completely cool with that. Then you go, okay, well, then we'll just do this.
And so you've also helped me to think harder about those sort of decisions.
He's going to get the ED running and then be, I want some more now, yes.
And see, that's the thing, is I don't. And honestly, if I hadn't been through this process and been through the complexities that I have been, I think I'd probably be keen to chase that next level. But because I've seen what it takes and I've seen the effort and I've seen the complexity, I'm not chasing 4, 5, 6, 700,000 horsepower. I'm not really interested in starting down that road because I know what that road looks like. And because I've tested that on a small scale and gone, it's a circus. Because I watched a fella out there on Sunday morning and he had, a turbo that was bigger than your head hanging off the side of his Barra, but he was going home on a tilt tray. And to me, that's not a successful day out. And I'm sure it wasn't a successful day for him either. But I drove to the track, went round for an hour and a half and did sort of just 3 pit, stop, give it a minute, go again. I did not see the temperature creep. I didn't like nothing gave me any grief. And I didn't run it too hard, didn't push it too hard. Just took it easy, little squirts, and then you drive home.
I think that's
a perfect day out for me.
Yeah, and that should be the goal for a lot of people, whether or not they're going as fast maybe as they want to, or they succeed sometimes. Even just a win for any motorsport is being able to drive home or put your car on the trailer is still fine. I was at roll racing, for example, last weekend with a customer's GTR that I've sort of been involved with since the very get-go, and now he's pushing sort of 1,000 to 1,100 horsepower through this setup. And he actually got knocked out, unfortunately, because it was either a miss-shift or a bit of a wheel spin, which caused his miss-shift. And he got knocked out by a much slower car, unfortunately, but these things happen. But so at the end of the day, we've been out here, we've had some fun, and you're able to drive your car an hour and a half back at the end of your night, zero issues.
And it pumps 1,100 horsepower,
Yeah.
and you can drive it home.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool all by itself.
And that's still where we're not pushing that car to what it's capable of yet. We've got a few other little things to sort out, being just it needs a bit more fuel. So we're going to 3 fuel pumps now to try and get to that next little bit.
And see, this is what extraordinary I find about you and what you do is the level that you work at. I don't probably hear you go into enough detail about it. And I'm going to try and probably squeeze a bit out of that today. Like the fact that you're building cars at that level, like these are not mucking around things. This is starting to get pretty serious once you're on the northern side of 1,000 horsepower. But that's the level of stuff that, I look at anything that you build and anything that comes out of your shop, you're always building it to the absolute best of your ability, which I have noticed is pretty bloody good.
There's definitely a point in time, I think, where, hey, I would love to build every car with all the cool stuff, and I can do all this stuff. Running the shop, definitely, there's a point where you've got to still make money at the end of the day too. So you've got to go within what that person's budget is. So I don't necessarily, there's a few cars where I can do whatever I want on them, where you get to really showcase that sort of stuff. Again, it comes down to people's budget, which in Brisbane, unfortunately, there's not as big a market for that sort of things, or the budgets aren't as big as some of the other states. Like you got Sydney and Melbourne. Like you look at what the guys are doing down there, and it's completely next level. And it's great and it's awesome. And I wish I could do that with every car, but there's just not the market there for it.
No, it is a smaller market, but what is being done is still kind of silly, because I attended roll racing more recently, and I didn't realise how many 1,000+ horsepower cars exist now.
Well, again, as everything technology increases, as turbo technology increases, everything doesn't go backwards. It's always going to progress and improve. And what used to be 300 horsepower back, I guess 15, 20 years ago, then 10 years ago became 600 horsepower to now. Realistically, you don't have a serious build now until you're sort of 800 to 1,000 plus now. Like that's everything just keeps stepping it up.
And that's what I remember is back when you and I were starting these things, as you said, 250 horsepower. That was like, if you had 300 horsepower, that was pretty serious, and particularly early SRs, trying to wind those up to 300-400 horsepower back then. That was like on the bleeding edge for some of those things.
Yeah. Well, again, I've just did a run-in tune actually yesterday on another SR20. Quite a really nice build. This customer's done a good job. I was just in for tuning and stuff. But I'm hoping to sort of crack 600 out of that.
Out of an SR20?
Yeah.
What?
But again, that's not a big power figure for an SR either. That's limited by the turbo size that it's got on it. But we're still trying to get some drivability out of it too. So
is that stroked? Is that 2?
No, 2 litre still.
What? Yeah. See, I just haven't been paying attention for a while. The technology has just taken meteoric jumps.
Well, again, it's the management systems that we've got. We can put more sensors in. We can check engine safety at every level now. And as long as you can understand all that and set all your parameters, there's no reason why you can't push engines the way we are now.
And these are all things that you've built through trial and error as well, like your knowledge of these things and stuff that you've developed, and these skills around this. This is stuff that you sort of developed off your own race car and your own experience as well.
Well, back then, yes, definitely. obviously a lot of the things that I build now, I've never had my own race car per se at those sort of levels, because I'm still building mine in the background, which will be amazing once it's done, just FYI. But again, it's time. But no, like again, as what you were saying earlier with community being quite small, like even from a tuner's perspective, like where there's a group of us, we all chat in the background and we all occasionally brainstorm off each other as well. And hey, we've got this car doing this. Have you come across this before? And we all do it. And I think it's always important to, you know, there's tuners that have been in the game 20 years that I'll ring up every now and then and be like, hey, so I don't quite get this. What's going on? And it could just be the simple thing of a fresh set of eyes or a different thought process. You go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, I'm an idiot. Or vice versa. You know, you might get a call from one of them and then you go, oh, yeah. And it's just sometimes a different perspective. And probably at some point, maybe, if I'm still in the game in 20 years, I'll have some other dude starting up his shop like I did, and he'll start ringing me, and I'll just remember when I was at that point, hey, someone was able to offer me that, so if I can help someone else at that point, yeah. It's all about just, we're all in the same industry. We're all trying to do the same thing, achieve the same goal at the end.
And you did bring up something that's well worth discussing. Your magical race car that will one day do things. You got to talk us through what you're planning there, because obviously you've got an interesting motor choice as well.
Well, yeah, I had a few different motor choices or ideas originally for that car, and eventually just settled on this particular one, which I think there's a few people that have pulled it off now, unfortunately. I'm like, damn, I'm not the first one anymore. But back when I did plan on doing this, it would have been sort of the maybe one of the first ones out there. But yeah, I managed to get this VK56, so it's the Nissan V8 5.6 litre, which the new Patrols came out in over here, but they're a slightly different model to mine. So mine was out of the Titan truck that was in the States, and it got imported. And that now, however little room, now sits in the front of my S14. And I knew I wanted ITBs for this thing. Like I want that just raw NA noise from this thing. I didn't want a turbo. Everyone's like, you should just turbo. I said, no, don't want to do it. I just want that crisp, yeah. And for the life of me, I could not find ITBs anywhere that I wanted for this thing. Like to the point where I actually messaged like Forsberg because he had the VK56 set up in his, and I was like, right, where'd you get yours? And he actually replied. I didn't expect that. Then I got chatting to, it was MA Motorsport that originally built his car. And I was like, do you have any of these ITBs? Like I can't get anywhere. I spent about 8 months, just anyone I could possibly think of. And then stupidly enough, well, maybe not stupidly, but a very good friend of mine that got me on that process that you're saying I taught you. He taught that to me before I had a shop. Just the confidence to just pull it apart and just work it out. And he suggested to me, man, the V8 supercars run those engines. Why don't you just get a hold of them? I was like, what? No, don't be silly. And I was at the point by the end of that 8 months just going, I don't know what else to do. I literally sent a Facebook message on there. It was the Nissan V8 supercar team. I just sent them a message. Hey, look, I'm trying to do this. Do you have anything that could possibly help? And I actually got a message back from, I assume their office person or person that looked after their media. And she said, look, Todd Kelly was actually driving the truck, so he apparently enjoys driving the cars around or as part of the process. He said, look, he's just driving the cars down. But he said, here's his email address, send him across an email and go from there. And I ended up, he's a lovely guy. And I think too, like what you were saying at Motorsport, like everyone is just genuinely lovely. And he was kind enough as well to go through a list of parts, timed out parts that they had off the V8 supercars, and did a really nice, generous price for me, which then turned into, he says, look, if you've got a team as well, come out to QR. We're at QR this weekend. come and have a look around the car and see how we set it up and just have a chat. And I took a couple of friends that I knew would be instrumental to helping me figure all these sort of things out. And I think he gave us about 45 minutes of his time on a race day, just chatting to him and trying to get some ideas and how things were going to work. And that just blew my mind that, even at that level, man, most of the people are just everyday guys, and they're happy to talk about their experiences. And that was amazing. I thought absolutely amazing experience. And then to be able to, the car was one of the V8, their particular car was there, and it's just up in the air. He said, "I'll just go around and have a look if you want." I was just casually getting underneath the car and how did they do all this? But again, a really great experience and just insight, and yeah, very, very thankful to have that opportunity even just to be able to do that. Which then led into, buying a bunch of parts off that to go on my motor, which their particular motor was very all custom block and custom heads. And I remember asking him, I said, "You've got all this stuff and I've just got standard engine base. Is this all going to fit?" Like, it was just, "Oh, it should." No, not even close. So it's taken a lot of time then to get all those parts to work with that base, and but have enjoyed it a lot. Yeah.
And that comes back to something that I've learned from building cars these last few years. Bolt-on is not bolt-on. Not once, not ever has anything just worked.
More often than not, yeah.
Like, and they go, "Made to fit." And then you go and put it in and you're like, "It doesn't fit."
But again, this is where it comes back to, again, what I was saying earlier, like, this is part of what I enjoy about it, because it's not just simple. Otherwise you get bored.
Oh, totally. There's always something.
Yeah.
Every time. And it just, which is why I was so happy to buy one that was done.
But no, I've actually had a revelation with that particular car, which I've started working on again. And it was about 8 weeks ago, I came across some paperwork when I was tidying up the house. And I used to go to a lot of business seminars and all this sort of stuff you do after hours when you're like, right, how can I need to level up, what can I do? And you start going to XYZ people talking or whatever. And one of the things I came across in that particular set of books was goals I'd set for 2021.
Wow.
One of them being finish the S14. And this is 2023. I'm like, a little bit behind. It was 2.5 years since I've worked on that car. Smidge behind. But I sort of decided at that point, I'm not going to look back in 2 years' time again and look at another set of goals that I've written and been like, I still haven't done anything. So decided from that point, every Friday, unfortunately for customers, is Race Car Friday. So I down my own tools. The shop keeps working, and I've got the office guy and mechanic there. But I just work on my own thing, which has sort of been probably 60-40 to be fair, and I still end up working on customers' cars. And now my Fridays turned into Race Car Saturday, and yeah. But I have done something else. I've started making a few little commitments around when that car is going to be ready by. So I know if I set commitments, then it's...
Here we go. Say it out loud. When's it going to be ready? When are we going to see it?
My plan is to sort of have it at minimum on display with a shop, or hopefully running by then, but for sort of World Time Attack-ish next year if I can get it down there.
So World Time Attack 2024.
Yeah, now I've shot myself in the foot, haven't I?
Yeah, boy.
But yeah, would love to have it down there by then. So that's the plan.
I'm very excited because it's spent a lot of time collecting dust.
It's to a point, it's still collecting dust. I'm sort of like, I just finished building a dry sump tank, which has taken its own again learning experience, and how is you're going to de-air the oil and get any sort of flow issues out, and how's this whole system going to work. I just thought, I sort of looked at Peterson dry sump tanks and things, and they're about roughly the size I wanted, looking about $1,600 to $1,800 for a tank. So I could make this. But again, if it's your own stuff, it's just having the confidence to go, right, I'm just going to do it. But I think I've come up with some pretty cool concepts, and again, chatting to a bunch of people you have around you and bounce ideas off, and people that have experience with it. you can do whatever you want. I think to a fair point.
I think so too, but also having something, and I was going to call it a vehicle. I didn't actually necessarily mean it to be the vehicle, but I think it's really important in your business to have something that you can play with and use as an research and development tool. And I think that your race car and your race car Fridays is actually really critical for pushing forward your skill, the shop, and all of the things that you do. Because as you said, you're building a dry sump setup from scratch.
Well, the tank setup, yeah, the
Which is
actual pan itself.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I was able to buy off the supercar teams, but I also did then have to make a whole billet spacer and adapter because the shape's different. The like for example, the supercar cranks are de-stroked to 5 litre. So one of the big problems I found was coming across to my motor is I'm not de-stroking mine. Mine's staying 5.6, so my counterweights on the crank are bigger, so it doesn't just bolt up because the crank's bigger. So I've actually got a 12mm billet spacer that I've designed to go between the dry sump pan and the motor to be able to facilitate all that.
And see, this is your research and development project, isn't it, mate? This is
Yeah, it's been fun. I did all that actually about 3 years ago now.
far out. So what's left on this car? What's left to do? What do you got? You got what's that? 13 months, which means you've got 12 months.
I've got to get cracking. There's still a fair bit to do. The main processes and a lot of the parts I already have over the few years I've been working on them, sourcing them. So the gearbox is already there, the clutch has already been made, the tail shaft is already there, the engine's already there. Just the engine needs a little bit more work than what it's got. It's still in its standard form at the moment. I've figured out a lot of the niggly things along the way, like starter motor actually, for example, was a weird one to have to figure out. So S&V8 supercars, they run transaxle, so their starter's all in the back of the car. So the way their carbon air boxes are all designed is where my starter motor goes for mine. So I actually ended up making, again, my next door neighbour is actually a lovely guy. He makes canvas canopies. Believe it or not, he has been his own massive help at various points. So I actually made a fireproof canvas little sleeve that with an alloy frame that I pop riveted to the carbon insert underneath, and I had to cut part of the carbon air box out. But my starter motor sits under that.
Wild.
But hey, if it works, it works.
Not stupid if it works, mate.
Yeah.
That's always
But I certainly definitely don't have the sort of budgeting to go, oh, okay, well, just that carbon bit needs redoing, so let's just remake a whole carbon thing, and that's out of my league.
So what's left? What are the big things? Let's throw it out to the universe. Talk to me about what's left. What's the complexity?
Well, I actually just bought, it's got a whole polycarbonate window kit coming, the new one, so all the Lexan in there is all cracked and old and stuff. So all that's getting replaced with new stuff. Got a bit of a carbon theme, I think. So I've got a carbon bonnet, carbon intake, carbon doors, carbon boot. I'm thinking about buying a carbon dash for it just because I think that'd be cool. I've got to make a frame still for the front end for all the body kit to even bolt to. None of that's made yet. Then the car, because of the finish I want it to have, is also you build a car, you get it running, and then you completely pull it back down to scratch because then it's got to go off and get blasted, repainted, everything redone, and then built again for the final time to have that finish that you want to have. Painting it and doing all that stuff, and then building it on top, you'll scratch the paint, you'll stuff it.
Well, that means you've only got 6 months, mate. So now you've really got to.
I've already got the people in place.
Yeah, you got the people in place, but you haven't done the bloody work, mate.
Wiring, so I've got to do a whole ECU setup and loom for that as well. Fuel system, I've already spoken to the relevant parties regarding that. So they're I believe I have on the way like all the stuff for fuel lines, coolant lines, oil lines, brake lines, everything. I've just got to make it all. But I love doing that stuff. So
I think we're going to have to be very strict on Race Car Fridays now.
Yeah, I know there's a fair bit of work, but at the same token, there's once you get your head down and bum up, you can start making some progress. But it's also why I started doing, whether it's 1 day a week or a few of the weeks I haven't been able to do, I stay back after hours just to start, a couple of hours every day just to keep that chipping over. Because I know if I leave it to 6 months' time, Yeah, look, it won't happen. Last minute racing is definitely that's where you run into issues and where you break things because not everything's been thought through or everything's been a rushed process, and you'll end up out there just going, overlooked this or could have done this better, but I didn't because I was in a rush. So everything's that I've done so far has been really sort of, right, is this going to work? How's this going to work? Is this going to do what we want it to do? Is this going to future-proof if I want to go the next step later? How can we do this? So fingers crossed, but in doing all that, that's where you get the longevity. If you overbuild everything, then where you're running it at should be fairly reliable. Hopefully. That's the theory.
Mate, you got a busy few months ahead. You really do. I'm looking forward to seeing this because I haven't seen you out on track. I'm trying to remember. When would be the last time you would have...
When I sold the car. I've had people, I guess, offer me cars over the years, but I guess there's always that thought or possibility of you drive someone else's car, something happens, whether it's your fault, someone else's fault, or you break it or whatever. I've then just created more work for myself because then I've got to fix it. So I've always steered clear, partly because of that reason. Mainly actually because of that reason, let's be honest. Just because I don't need more work because I already have too much to do on my own stuff. So I'm never going to get to my own stuff if I'm constantly fixing more people's stuff again. So I just choose not to.
Mate, can I throw a challenge at you guys?
Possibly. I'll let you throw the challenge.
Yeah,
whether or not
you don't have to do it. You don't have to agree. Because I know you blokes have been making more videos around the shop. I would love to see these Friday updates on what's being done on the race car.
Well, they were started, and I think I'm actually about 3 weeks behind on the said updates because again, race car Fridays didn't eventuate.
And that's why I'm asking you.
Yes.
To commit to this because I'd like to see more race car Friday. I want to see this thing.
But again, I look at too. Sometimes, like you say, even the last 10% can take 90% of your time. So for the dry sump tank, for example, I've made it like a quick release lid on it per se. I thought, we'll just put some bosses on the side. The quick releases can line up and blah, blah, blah. And I sort of did that. I was like, they're just square looking blocks on the side. That looks terrible. So then proceeded to, by the time I came up with an idea and then make them, it was 3 hours in just making some blocks that the clips could bolt onto.
There's a video in that.
Yeah, I get that, but at the same... yeah, well played.
I want to see these things. And this is what's funny, is you don't appreciate, because it's your everyday, but there are intricacies to those things, even to you when they might seem simple. The process is fascinating. That's my challenge to you.
Okay, so see what I can come up with.
Yeah.
I got some photos actually I can show you, that said bosses, because I did actually take... there's 4 of them, so there was sort of 4 stages of making them. So I actually took a picture of one beside itself at all the 4 different stages, so you can sort of see what I started with and what I went to. But no, little things.
Because I think that stuff is fantastic, and I really love the level of fabrication that you do and the level of fabrication that comes out of your shop. Like something that really blew me away, that Evo that you built, the black hard-tuned
yep.
Evo, and it had the wastegates
out the bonnet.
Not only did it have the wastegates out the bonnet, but you went to extraordinary levels to make sure that they angled, sat flat, level, and flush with the bonnet when it closed.
Yeah.
I mean, you could set your watch by these. I mean, they were that accurate.
Again, it's the finished product, especially if it's something that is in your face, whether it's that or not. But I think everything should have that sort of attention to detail to it. And again, I'll probably reference this a bit at the moment, but the tank, for example, I don't know if I've shown you these pictures. I put a picture up, and actually a few people that surprised me didn't know what that was. So the bottom baffle plates inside my tank, if you put them together, actually create the JDM logo, JDM automotive logo. Just stupid things. But I was like, inside my tank is the logo But yeah, like just little things. I think it can make the massive difference. Any shop can do the 80% build. Then there's a few shops that get to your 90% build, and there's even less shops that get to the next level, I guess, per se. So it's always trying to push to how can we get to that top level.
And that's something that I guess was also keen to showcase today, because as I've watched you do this beautiful hand tigging on things that people will never see, there's a real art to that, and having that level of care that even though nobody will ever see it, you won't be happy unless you know that it's to the very best of your ability.
Yeah. And I think that's important though too. And it's not that build for me is not just about getting the car out there. It's about what I can do, which in a way annoys me a little bit now, because I look at the work that I did 3 years ago going, I can do better than that. But I just don't have the time to, the headers on it, for example, that I made 3 years ago. And I'd never made a set of headers before in my life. And it's the only set I will ever try and make, I'll be honest. But I tried to copy, again, like V8 supercar, like where their diameters and dimensions and things. And there's not a lot of room in the car for exhaust work in a small shell car with a big Y-block motor. And at the time, I actually approached a guy that makes headers and exhaust, and has apparently there's a program you can buy that tells you the optimum merge points to get your vacuum correct at each cylinder, and all that sort of stuff, and for your flow, depending on how much air your engine will move. And I got this guy out to have a look because he'd done a few other guys' cars, and he referenced one of those cars, and he was like, "Oh yeah, there wasn't a lot of room in that car." I was like, "Mate, that's got about 3 times as much room as what I've got." And he's like, "Right, I'll come out and take a look." And he came out and had a look, and he wanted me to notch the chassis rails just to try and get the bends through and all this sort of stuff. And he admitted, he's like, "Look, this isn't going to be what's optimum. This is just going to be what fits." And it would still cost me about $4 to $5 grand to get these things made. And I was like, well, look, for that sort of price, I'm going to have a red hot crack at my own stuff. Whether or not it works anywhere, probably won't work anywhere near as well as what he could do. But I got it to fit without notching the rails, and it cost me, it was like $350 in materials, but it's 34 hours of my time to make them.
And there's where the cost is. 34 hours of labour.
Yeah. But hey, I can look back and go, you know what? I made them.
I did it.
And I look back now and go, I could weld so much better right now. And I'm like, nah. So I guess that some of those aspects are a little bit annoying, because I do look at some things on the car now going, I could do so much better than what I have done, because it's been long times between working on it. But again, that's not no excuse, but it doesn't mean you don't put in the effort now when you can do something better.
I'm really excited to see this car. I'm really excited to see it progress. I'm really excited to see it
I'm just excited to sit in the driver's seat one day.
Oh, absolutely. Because you got yourself a little 350 as well, didn't you? That,
I did.
As a little entertainment car. I think you missed the thrill.
Yeah. There was definitely parts of that I've enjoyed a lot. And again, R&D, like you're saying, like just the idea of that was to show people, because again, 350 is also a bit of a specialty car per se. Like there's no shop you could, well, up here anyway, where you say if you've got a 350, you go to this place. It's just I thought I'd do some R&D and actually show people what's worthwhile upgrades to do, like things like the plenum spaces on them is quite a popular one. So I did dyno runs before and after. I actually left it on the dyno and did the plenum spacer while it was still on the dyno, and then dynoed it straight after. So I could actually show people like what's a worthwhile upgrade to do and what actually sends you backwards. So I was trying to do a few of those things and found, that was actually a great way to, I think it was, I bought this plenum spacer off eBay. It was $250 and it made, on an NA car, like it doesn't sound like a lot, but for what they're doing, it was like 11.8 horsepower, an extra 30 foot-pound of torque just from this little 5/16 plenum spacer that took me, an hour and a half to fit.
That is a significant...
Well, when you're talking 230 horsepower from the get-go on a standard ECU, that was great.
Yeah, that's significant.
So I go, okay, well, that's really worthwhile doing. Then I made a cold air intake for it, and I tried to copy another business design to a point. But I put that on and I actually went backwards doing
Really?
the cold air intake with it. But later then realised what I'd actually done is the boss that I'd made to put the airflow meter in the pipe wasn't at the correct depth. So obviously, as you can imagine, in a pipe, where that measures air in that pipe would be different at various points.
Correct.
So I had that at the wrong depth. I was a couple of mil off. And I didn't, again, having a chat with people around you, I was like, why did I go backwards? And I was having a chat with these guys. Like, oh, is your airflow meter the correct depth? I'm like, what? Oh, yeah, that probably makes sense. Okay. So I copied the standard airflow meter depth and I did all that and I never put it back on to try. So the pipe still sits there. It's not in the car. But then I later bought an ECU, plug and play ECU for it and tuned it. But prior to that also found out maybe the motor's not as healthy as I would like. But also decided if that motor comes out, nothing standard would go back in and I'm not quite ready for that yet. So I'll just send it. Can't hear anything wrong with it yet. So.
Nah, should be right. How'd you go when you did the plug-in ECU for a 350?
Yeah, good. So again, dyno figures can be very subjective, like time of year, heat, airflow, all that sort of stuff. So weirdly enough, from the time that I tuned, or when I actually put it back on the dyno, it was a year later after I did the first few dyno runs, my power figure had actually dropped. Even to the point where I was like, I thought my tune was out then. I was like, okay. So I put the standard ECU back in, everything standard back in, and my power level was actually worse than prior to my tune. I'm like, okay. But the car itself drives fine. I actually went to a 350Z meet a couple of weekends ago where they've all got, I've got the first model 350, so it's a VQ35DE, so like the base model, the one that makes the least power basically. They've all got HRs and 370s, and I still found I was quite comfortably beside them. I thought, oh, okay, maybe it's going better than I thought. But I am keen to put it back on the dyno. I'm also keen to, I'm just going to put it on the 85 just because I can. Again, my own R&D. What difference does E85 make on a non-boosted car versus 98? Because that particular tune that's on it now that I've done is very knock limited. So it's it'll make more power with more ignition timing in it, but it detonates. So with the 85, I'd be able to get around that and could possibly push it a bit more and get some more out of it. But again, just my own R&D purposes. Just because I can.
And that's a cool thing because you can play with it, you can have a bit of fun, and then you can learn things that you can then pass on to your customer base to go, I know this works because I've spent my own money, my own time, my own efforts, and here's the result.
Well, again, yes. Similarly, I just did a sort of completely wide front to back and tuned a BMW replica tourer car. And same thing, like dual van, all sort of stuff. He's on 98. And we were talking about he asked, what's the advantage of going to 85? Because he was been thinking about it, but he doesn't know if he wants to do it. I said, well, just hang on that thought and let me see what the difference makes to my car. And then if I get gains off it, then I can say maybe it's worthwhile. Or if the gain's extremely minimal, it's not even worth it. But again, that will also vary from motor to motor as well. Like not every engine is knock limited based on 98 either. So that's going to be very subjective, but be good to know.
Just for your own interest, I guess.
Plus, it smells better, right, as you drive past.
Oh, it's the best. I was sitting behind one the other day, and you're like,
but again, like I had more plans for that car. Like there's a turbo sitting on my back shelf ready for it.
There is.
But just time and
Finish.
I've got the 350 to a point where it's doing what I want it to do, which is aesthetically look a bit different. Like I had a body kit shipped over from the States for it. I had that painted. I've got Ferrari 20-inch wheels on it. I did Aki Bono 370 brakes all around and got them painted in fluoro green. And I've done a few things and made it sound better and all that sort of stuff and tuned it. And that was the original goal for that car. Was I wanted something to be able to drive to a car meet, for example, and just go hang out with a few people that were going to car meets still. And not be rocking up in my SV6 or just something that at least didn't say, I've got a shop that does this stuff.
Need a Falcon, mate.
Oh, God. Actually, funny that. You always do tend to comment on when there's another Falcon in the shop.
I'm always so excited because when I brought my Falcon in, Falcon, your place was really a no Falcon zone. And I would like to think that I have helped turn the tide to a few Falcons being welcomed through what was otherwise a heavily Japanese workshop.
Well, we still specialise in Japanese things, but I've definitely broadened my horizons a little bit.
Look out.
I tune Holdens now. We tune Fords. I've got I think I'm booked in about 6 weeks' time-ish. Around there. I've got one of the new Jaguar F-types coming in to have a look at as well. I've done a couple of what are they? Renault Clio. Got a Renault Clio track car out there running around. But this guy bought this software from the States and just said, "Look, I've been to 8 different shops. None of them want to touch it. I've been recommended you. Can you help me out?" And I like learning. So, at the end of the day, tuning's tuning. The engine needs to do the same things. Everything's the same process. It's just understanding your way around the software to get the engine to do what you want it to do. So I don't mind doing all this sort of stuff.
It's a hell of an attitude to just figure it out. Should be right.
This is what I've been, and I think, like you were saying before, this is the process that's helped you out. Just best way to learn is throw yourself in the deep end.
Figure it out.
You'll never learn faster than when you do that.
No.
And I tell you what, that particular Renault Clio, he went out to the track and sent me some videos of it. He said, "Mate, I did not lift a spanner all day, whole day at the track."
Particularly impressive given that it's a Renault.
Mate, to be fair, this was actually a really cool little thing. Like he'd completely
cool.
gutted cage. He's put a lot of effort into it. But glad I could be a part of it to help him out
absolutely.
at the end.
And I'm just being a smart ass. I'm just being cheeky there.
Right. But no, it definitely did I do a lot of other things that are not just JDM.
I've seen the barrows rolling through the shop and I'm there going, mate, it's very hard. I know you like your RBs, but when you've got 4 litres of straight 6 as compared to 2.5 litres of straight 6.
I'll tell you what, there's an interesting setup that's coming in soonish. You'll enjoy. Oh, I won't say any more on that one for now.
So an ED tick-fed turbocharged.
A white one with taxi beads in it. Yeah,
that might be rolling through. That will be exciting.
That is on the to-do list. So.
We'll see if we can roll 300 horsepower out of that. That'll be more than enough.
Without the gaskets leaking oil this time.
That was
we made it to £2.
Look, we did, and I think this is the thing: is we did successfully achieve turbocharging the motor. The motor
we just didn't get much.
The motor
pressure.
wasn't willing. It really didn't want to play the game.
Yeah.
So we did actually do it. We did it. We got it there.
Goal success, green light.
Yeah,
tick.
Goal success. Did it reach full completion? Look, not quite, but
realistically, I believe if I remember correctly, the goal was, or part of the main attraction was, he said, "Christian, I just want those dose noises."
Pretty much. I just want the dose. And I just want to let the thing off and go,
hey, we achieved that.
We sure did.
Having said that, though, with the amount it did do, if I remember correctly, on about £2, I'm interested to see what it does on, 5 to 7.
What did it do on £2? I don't even remember.
No, not power-wise, just the amount of dose.
Just the amount of dose.
It
did a lot. It sounded like the gates of hell opening up. It was fantastic. I have that burned into my mind. That was a glorious moment. Like right up until the engine started leaking 7 at 7 different places. That was a really good.
To be fair, it's like so many things. It's great until it's not.
It works right up until it doesn't.
Yeah.
Mate, that's one of my favourite sayings. Mate, I could sit here and talk crap with you forever about cars.
But no one wants to listen to that, let's be honest.
Look, oddly, I think they might. And if you've made it this far, we appreciate having you. Christian, I just want to say thank you, mate. I want to say thank you for you taking the time to come in and chat with me. And I want to thank you for your friendship and your guidance and your support over all these years. It's something that I really treasure and that I'm very grateful for.
I could say exactly the same thing back to you, sir. Like, you've always been an amazing help when I've needed something that I know you can help with or you're really great at. Like, again, this is part of the process I was talking about before. Like, if you don't know something, sometimes you're better off just asking someone else that knows their way around websites, advertising, marketing, Facebook, whatever. You know, you've always been someone, even back in the day, just when you were happy for me to put a sticker on the front of the car and you helped me out. And, you know, like, I could never thank you enough for doing that either. So,
Mate, I think I've taken the piss enough to. I'm pretty sure we're even now.
oh dear.
But look, you've heard it here and now. The ED's getting finished, but more importantly, Christian's going to have a race car again.
Yeah, I'll be driving an ED at when
You
do we
will.
get that?
Well, this is the best part because I've got two of them now. We'd actually be
really?
able to take them both out because one of the other big
Is this
things...
going to be when we're going down the straight? I mean, like, I'm just
Yeah.
going to wind that extra boost in just to be.
Yeah, it needs the button. It needs... So if you think...
That
like,
I've got to hide from you so you can't use it.
yeah, like David Hasselhoff style, like Kit Knight Rider, it needs like the special secret... Yeah. Turbo Boost or Fast and the Furious, you know, the nitrous buttons on the...
Well, no,
Too
Fast
soon,
and
Junior.
Furious is you just have a can opener attached to your
Yeah.
wastegate line. You just
Yeah.
pull it off when you just need to get that little
Yeah,
bit
that's
faster,
the
blow
one.
the motor up in the process. But, hey,
Good tension and manifold.
well, your floor pan falls out. Sure.
Mate, if people want to follow you, follow the shop, Sideways Motorsport, where can people find you and the workshop on the internet?
Well, I guess between Facebook and Instagram, we've got Sideways Motorsport accounts there. If you're looking to follow the S14 build, I've got a separate account, which was Christian Sideways Bedewi for that one, actually, where I've put a lot of the build process behind on that, which one day someone might find that interesting, or more just like when I get 70 years old and I'll look back at all these videos and go, right, you're an idiot for doing it that way. I could have done it this way, but, you know. There'll be lots of those moments, I'm sure.
Mate, I'll put all those links in the show notes. But Christian, thank you. I appreciate you coming in and taking the time today and sharing a little bit of the wisdom of your journey.
You're right. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
On that note, catch you next time.